Hello and welcome to Misbehavior, the podcast for college student conduct professionals. I'm Colette.
And I'm Kurt.
First, we wanted to make sure we reminded everybody our summer book club is coming up. The Just Desserts and Dissertations Club is meeting Thursday, July 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. There's still time to sign up, get your free copy of the dissertation, which is Dr. Aaron Kaplan's How the Student Conduct Process Impacts Student Belonging. I'm on chapter 4, y'all, and I think this should be mandatory, required reading for anyone that does student conduct work. So we hope that you'll pick your favorite dessert and join us for some conversation on July 16th. The registration link is right in our podcast information below, so it's easy to sign up.
Colette, I have a pro tip.
Yeah.
Don't buy your dessert yet because I already bought some and then I ate it. So now I'm going to have to buy dessert again closer to the event.
In our household, we have 2 rounds of Halloween candy.
Is the second round the discount Halloween candy?
No, we end up buying the expensive ones the day before because we ate our way through the first 2 bags. And P.S., we don't have any kids in our neighborhood, so we eat all that.
Then let me encourage you to a round 3 where you go to CVS and buy it when it's 70% off. It's even more delicious. So,
all right. Noted. We've also found some good knockoff Girl Scout cookies at the local dollar store. So if you're doing a discount, Just Desserts and Dissertations, I highly recommend the caramel coconut cookie. Well, let's get right into. I'm very excited to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Brian Norcross, who after 40 amazing years at Franklin and Marshall College is retiring from running the instrumental music program there and has been highly influential to me as an educator and a leader. He is also a community builder. Dr. Norcross is a recruitment and a retention machine at the college. And I think there are lots of things you might be wondering, like, why do we have an orchestra conductor on a conduct podcast? But I can't think of someone that I've learned more from as just being a human who works with other humans. I am excited to learn about your new life in the community because you already created a community orchestra at Franklin and Marshall when some other local colleges were starting to downsize their music programs, but also you're well known for being the head of the Allegro program in the community, which I think is still going.
Yes. So first off, it's terrific to be here. And yes, the Allegro Orchestra Lancaster is still very much going, as is the Allegro Next Gen Youth Music Program, which has 4 different performing groups under its auspices, serving about 200 students. And yes, I retired from Franklin and Marshall. I was warned that I might be getting a lot of phone calls from other institutions. I said, yeah, right. And then within days, I had 3 offers. So I've decided that in retirement, it'd be fun to build a new community orchestra at Millersville University.
I'm going to say that you are joining me in the world of quotation mark retirement. But it's a fun place to be.
Well, part of this whole retirement thing isn't going comatose. It's finding new passions, new energies, and sometimes just new places. So the Millersville situation, I've actually spent last year working with them, so I know many of the students. They now know me, which means my joyful reputation has influenced the Tell School of Music. So I'm feeling pretty confident this is going to be a fun time, and it's most likely just a 1 year. Great. So I'm going to try and build something up that then someone else can take. There's always a chance it might be more than 1 year, but at that point, then I'm making the decisions. And so we'll see how that all goes.
I'm jealous of this air quote retirement business that you two are in because I think that sounds very appealing to me right now.
Well, my wife pointed out, since I'm still doing the Allegro Orchestra and the Allegro Next Gen, and I'm the director of music at the First United Methodist Church, just those 3 positions on their own kind of constitutes a full-time job. So what we've decided is I've retired to do just 1 job instead of 2. And I'm feeling good with that. She also says that she relaxes more when I work more.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, we balance. We balance things out.
I'm pretty excited. We have a sort of standard icebreaker that Kurt is going to do, and I'm not sure I've ever been more excited for this one.
Suddenly, I'm not that excited, but okay.
So, Brian, one of the things that we ask all of our guests is to tell us about a time when you got in trouble in college. So, was there ever a time in college where you found yourself in trouble or in the conduct office?
Well, I was not the kind of person that caused a lot of trouble. However, there were some things that I did behind the scenes that no one would believe that I actually did. And I supported some of my friends who did things that no one could believe they actually did. So, since I'm a musician, the University of Massachusetts, which has a marvelous, very big marching band program and wonderful music majors. But those two contingents, though, they don't necessarily mesh beautifully. So there was one of my friends, and I helped post the signs, created a sign that said that all non-music majors were going to have to audition for marching band, and all music majors were excused from the audition. That created a little bit of turmoil.
Do I understand that right? So, was that your way to keep them out?
That was just a way to annoy people. And sometimes the joy is just watching the annoyment. And also, if it's so ridiculous, people will say that's not possible. So this is ridiculous, which of course caused some people to say, "Oh my gosh," and then there was turmoil. Yeah, I mean, I had disagreements with professors. So I had a music history professor who gave us an exam, and they said everything in this exam, every single thing is in the book. So I studied the heck out of that book. Well, there was a question that I got wrong because I didn't study for that particular question. And I went back to the professor and said, "This was not in the book." And he said, "Look at page 165, the caption under the picture."
I like that that professor did not even have to reach for it and knew exactly what page
I
it
knew
was on.
exactly where it was. And I tried to have a filter up to be courteous and respectful, but sometimes I just said, I actually don't care. The filter's down. I said, "So what exactly are you teaching us?" And he said, "I'm teaching you how to leave my office." I said, "Okay, bye."
I thought he was teaching how to be petty, but that's, my take.
Yeah, it could be. So I mean, I had disagreements with other students, which never rose to we have to get help. It was we'd have conversations. Sometimes they were uncomfortable. Sometimes we came to agreeing to disagree, but that's kind of how I'm put together. And so being defiant and not recognizing someone else's opinion was just not part of my DNA. So now you ask the question, I'm remembering some of those experiences, which also after I have them, I shed that. I've got enough stuff to carry around. I don't need crap with me.
It's interesting to hear, though, people's relationship with rules and accountability.
Yes. And particularly in the music world, if you're in performing groups, you have to work with other people, which means, unfortunately, we don't all think the same way. Maybe that's not unfortunate. Maybe that's great. But sometimes in the moment, it seems unfortunate. And we also have different philosophies and different egos. And when you have all that mixed together with people whose frontal lobes aren't very well developed, you have the potential for terrific disagreements.
I wanted to start a little big picture. We all work with students of roughly similar ages in a sphere where mistake making is just part of the process. So Kurt and I meet with students who, violate policies or are accused of breaking rules. And you work with an ensemble where you are trying to guide people toward a common outcome together. And to me, these things are the same. But I joined your ensemble after many years not picking up a pair of drumsticks. And a student had told me, like, "Oh, we're desperate for percussionists." Like, well, I used to play the drums. I was in all county drums, like when I was in 8th grade. And he's like, "Great, Tuesday at 4:30, we're meeting." And first of all, I didn't realize it was going to become real, but then you were our leader. And I was terrified. And I would come to rehearsal at 4:30 and just stare at the clock, like, "Please be 6 o'clock. Please be 6 o'clock." I was so scared. but you made it so safe to make mistakes. And I wondered, where did you learn that? Or is that in your DNA? Or how did that evolve to have a culture of safety and an expectation that people were not going to be perfect?
When I was in 10th grade, I grew up in New Jersey. I played French horn. And that year, through the audition process, I was first chair in all state. That's a big deal. My teacher reinforced to me that it was too soon. I wasn't ready for this. That did not help my confidence. So that was one issue that I learned the very hard way. The second thing was the guest conductor came from a major conservatory music. The repertoire he chose was amazing. So that's the curriculum. So that's fantastic. But in the 3 days that we rehearsed together, basically 8 hours a day, sometimes more, I don't remember him saying one positive thing. And there were some criticisms of how some of us performed that was so pointed that it was painful. Now, here's where things get interesting. So all the horns in the section all took lessons from the same teacher. So she swept the wind ensemble. There were 5 of us. We all took lessons from the same teacher. Her husband was a very well-known high school band director who knew all of us, who also knew the guest conductor. Okay, now we set the table for what's about to happen. At one point, the horns were struggling with a passage. It was probably my fault. I don't know. And the high school band director went to the guest conductor and said, "Can I take the horns into the hallway and do a quick sectional on that passage that they're having trouble with?" And the guest conductor said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You can take the horns into the hall and leave them there." Now, that I can still hear his voice resonating in my soul. And I looked to the players on either side of me who were friends, and I said, "What one thing can I do to improve based upon that comment? We are the best freaking players in the state. We should be having a blast. This should be so much fun. And this isn't fun." And then I said, "I'm going to become the joyful conductor, and no one will suffer the way we are suffering under this oppressive leadership." Wow, not bad for a 10th grader. That became my mantra, which was recognizing that everyone wants to do well. It's just sometimes they have trouble doing it. And if you blast them out of their chair, it's not going to help. Being the joyful conductor meant that mistakes that happen were joyful. This is great. I get to teach something. There was a reason for me to get up in the morning. Yes.
Right. Did you make up the Norcross-isms that went along with that joyful conduct? Like, Colette would like to try that again.
There were sort of things that I thought of saying, what would I want to hear? And I can remember seeing an entire section or a player screw something up and recognizing what they really want to do is to do that better. Colette has asked if we can review that passage. So that tells Colette, I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
It tells Colette she's ready for what's going to be coming. If Colette has a question like, "I have no idea what that rhythm is," okay, let me help you with that. So when something goes sideways, it's my opportunity to teach. Now, 15 years after that 10th grade experience, I was at a conducting workshop at the same institution where that guest conductor was a faculty person. And conducting workshops are so interesting because you pay money so you can get up in front of some fine musicians and have a faculty conductor rip you to shreds in front of them. It's a wonderful growing experience, sort of. So this particular workshop was also tied in with a conference for conductors. This is significant. So I realized my time was coming and there was a rotation of faculty and that guest conductor was going to be up when I was up. I remember him. He does not remember me. So I'm about ready to start. I'm conducting Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man, which starts with timpani going boom, boom, boom. Standing behind the timpanist was the high school band director who knows the story, my undergraduate conducting mentor who knows the story, my master's conducting mentor who knows the story, and my doctoral conducting mentor who knows the story, and the 4 of them are friends. And they're standing there with their arms folded with a stupid grin on their face, like, I can't wait for this. This is going to be great. So I did my thing. The guest conductor had a great critical comment of something I could do technically better. And then he looked to the group and looked to me and said, "This conductor changed all of you. The music became joyful just because of his mere presence." And I looked at him and I said, "Thank you." Because that was a nice thing to say. Holy cow. But it's also a thank you because he had crushed my musical soul when I was in 10th grade. And that forced me to rethink who I wanted to become. And that helped me also to understand how to go from there. Now, the other thing is I'm a French hornist. French horn is notorious for making mistakes because of the nature of how the thing is put together. It is a musical nightmare. So some of us even joke that mistakes are part of the timbre of playing French horn, which means I have incredible empathy for anyone who makes a mistake because I've been there and I've done it,
Mm-hmm.
which also helped me to say, what do they need? Well, they need guidance. They need instruction. Sometimes they just need another chance. But the last thing they need is to be blown out of their chair.
In our field, there's a scholar, his name is Sanford, and he has a famous theory called challenge and support. So if there are practitioners in our field that don't know any other developmental theories or psychosocial theories, everyone knows challenge and support, and it's basically the XY axis. And your job is to try to create just the right amount of challenge so it's not too much that crushes someone, but also you don't want to pamper them to the point that they never build confidence and resilience. So you find that sweet spot. You were somebody that could take, like my friend Eleanor came to college and she tells the story. She may have been a horn player also, but
She
she
played
was
horn too. Yep.
a brass player.
Yep. Yep.
And you said, well, we need a bassoonist. And I just have a good feeling about this. And she was like, I've never played a woodwind instrument in my life. And that happened hundreds or thousands of times for you where you somehow knew, or did you, or can you tell us how did you know how far you could push someone?
Well, I taught middle school and high school before going to the college level. And there was actually I taught elementary band to start with. And in those experiences, you quickly have to figure out how far can I push this person before something bad happens? And where are we going to go with this? So it was really working with the middle school kids that I started to figure it out. First off, they destroyed me. My first year, they ate me for lunch every day. So then I started to think about, okay, who are the middle school teachers who I remember who can give me guidance based upon what I remember? One of them was my dad, because I had him for art, kindergarten through 8th grade. I thought we were going to college together. So I thought, how did he do this, giving materials to all these middle school kids? And I remembered it was patience and persistence. So trying to be an authoritarian with middle school kids wasn't going to work. I had to out-energize them with joy and be patiently persistent. When I started to do that, they were amazing. And the tide changed. I no longer raised my voice. That was the other thing. I learned if I raise my voice, that just ratchets up the problem. So when I brought that back down to conversational, wow, okay. And using fewer words helps, because if you use too many words, they're not going to listen to all of them. Now, in that process, I had to find students to play oboe and bassoon and French horn. This is the normal problem for all middle school and high school directors. So I would observe who are the people who clearly seem to have talent, but were mired in the middle of a section and seem to be going nowhere. And I would pull them aside and say, I think you have so much talent. How would you like to be the only person playing oboe? And Kathy Rodriguez said, I think I'd like that. And 3 years later, she went to Allstate. So figuring that out was just observing who seems to have something going for them, but maybe there's something in the way. Maybe they need more challenge. Maybe they need less challenge. Maybe they need to get out of a mob scene. Maybe they need to be in a mob scene. So it's being able to observe where they were at and where I perceived maybe they could go. So I had a remarkable record of being able to turn to people and say, I think you'd be great on bassoon. I think you'd be great on horn, and I will give you lessons. I'm not going to leave you floating away. I'm here for you in this process. And when you grow past me, then we'll go with someone else who's going to help you. So that's what I did.
I love the challenge and support model, but as we're talking about this, I'm struck by the intersection of empathy with this as well, because in order to be able to figure out where people are You need to be able to put yourself in their shoes to some extent, or be able to read the room and have some level of emotional intelligence. And I don't know if that's something we talk about a lot when we talk about challenge and support, the how of how you figure out where somebody is and what they need at that exact moment.
Emotional empathy is huge. It's huge for you as a leader to know where you're at, because sometimes what you're trying to do, you're in not the condition to do it, but also where they're at. So yeah, empathy is a really, really big thing, and trying to figure out what their shoe size is, that's significant.
Have you ever had a student that you just couldn't read
Oh yeah.
and to try to find that thing that would speak to them?
Oh yes, absolutely. And for those students, I learned telling the truth is helpful. I can't figure you out. I'd like you to tell me more about you. Why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Huh. Do you have any idea what you want to do when you're like a little older, like next year?
Mm.
So I do find telling the truth is useful when you can't figure it out. And even if you do think you figured it out, let's be clear, you're guessing. So that kind of conversation becomes really important.
So with empathy, that sounds like humility too, like leading with humility. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly it. Yeah, as soon as you think you got it, I got some very
yes.
bad news. One of the best things for me was COVID.
Oh,
Hmm.
tell me.
I thought I had it all figured out. I'm a music director. That's when I learned I'm not a music director. I'm a community director.
Mm.
And my community has a shared value, which is trying to do music well, instrumental music or choral music, because I conduct choirs also. Wow. Okay. Incredible humility point there. And then when you're a leader and you make a mistake, you better fess up to it. And that changes everything.
Hmm.
So the number of times in rehearsal, I don't like it when it happens, but to say, hey, I screwed that up. For me, let's do that again. Or I'm not going to be ready to do that again for another week. So let's go past that right now to give me time to practice and do this right. Now, the response from the students that I work with and even the professionals, they say the same thing. First off, we didn't realize you made a mistake. Okay. I'm not sure I feel good about that, but that's okay. But then there's an empathy support from them saying, you do so many things so great. Yeah. Don't be so hard on yourself. There's a wonderful story in one of Benjamin Zander's books. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Benjamin Zander. He's a conductor, music educator. And this is, what is it? Rule number 6 is what it's called. And the story is two prime ministers are meeting in one of the prime minister's home office. And one of the assistants comes in to the home prime minister, very agitated. The home prime minister listens to him and then says, remember rule number 6. And the assistant stops and says, of course. Yes, thank you. And they leave. Well, the same thing happens when another person comes in. And again, remember rule number 6. So after this second time, the visiting prime minister says, what's rule number 6? And the home prime minister says, don't take yourself so damn seriously.
Oh.
And then the visiting prime minister says, wow, what are rules 1 through 5? And the home prime minister says, there aren't any. When you free yourself from the weight of all of it, that oftentimes frees you to then have the empathy and the humility that you need. Because really, rule number 6 is all about humility.
When did that come for you? Because I think that takes some practice.
About 2 hours ago,
When you couldn't find your headphones?
that was it. I'm like, oh.
I think humility, at least for me, I I had to learn it sometimes the hard way.
Humility, you have to keep on learning, because there are other things that tend to grow in. They're weeds, and weeds grow fast. And humility is a slow growing tree. And that means you have to be aware that, whoa, there's a lot of weeds here. I better get back to my tree. So I think humility is a constant relearn, reposition, reconnect. And I think that
That
helps us mortals to figure out what's going on.
that feels very similar to the challenge and support axis. Like the more authority you have, you need to increase the humility by that
Mhm.
proportion too.
I study leadership. I work with a leadership coach. I got incredible readings to do. This whole leadership thing is really difficult. And one of the things that is missed quite oftentimes is humility. And the other thing is we have a lot of models that aren't very good. And not to be political at all, but in the last couple decades, we've had a parade of bad leaders in front of us. So that does not help. I mean, for me as a conductor, I don't have a model of what I do.
You've created the model for the rest of us.
Perhaps I do know someone who said they've watched me say, "Okay, I'm going to be Norcross," and after a year, they came back and said, "Okay, this whole Norcross thing is really personal, and I'm not you." I said, "Thank God, because you can imagine if there were two of us, it'd be like antimatter and terrible. But within all of that, there are concepts that we can have that can fit in all of our personalities. And then you can put it into your shoe size and be able to do something with that. But humility and leadership, and clearly when we're talking about people who are helping students who are in crisis, man, humility is huge.
Mhm.
And you become a model for that student who's in crisis. They're not going to remember the punishment. They aren't.
Right.
They're going to remember how they're treated.
It's interesting though, I got to perform with 2 students that did go on to become, and I've referred to them like they're the Brian Norcross of their university now. But both of them separately, they didn't even say this together, but they both said it, after I came back to play in the alumni concert that we all got to do this spring with you. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I just noticed how many things I do that I didn't know where they came from, and now I know." And so they carried on an intangible part of you that it wasn't like I'm gonna be him, but they did channel some of you.
I've become increasingly aware of the extraordinary impact a person can have. And I've been blessed. The students I work with, I see them almost every day for 4 years, with the exception of athletic coaches. Nobody else gets that. So, yes, that means I infect them. And sometimes I'm sorry about that, but it does mean that there's something that carries into them. And that can even be through a very short time connection. I have so many stories, but here comes another one. And this is going to sound egotistical on my part. It's not. I'm just relaying a story. So I was guest conducting a PMAA, that's Pennsylvania Music Educators Association, regional orchestra. One of my college colleagues, his daughter was playing in the group. His daughter was known for being excessively quiet. So on the way home from this festival, she was talking constantly on the way home. And both of her parents are like, "Where's our daughter?" Because I don't know who that is in the back seat who's just going off and off on all the experiences they've had. And then announced, "I want to be just like Norcross. I'm going to become a, a music educator." And both of the parents are like, "Pull over, let's talk to her." And that's what happened. So I ended up seeing my colleague when I was visiting another college where one of my kids were attending. And he sat down next to me and said, "It's your fault. I said, why don't you fill me in? Because I have no idea what I've done." And so he explained what happened in that festival that changed her whole perspective. And then she went to college to do that. And she was graduating to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Wow. That was just 3 days. So when something that's really important and effective infects a person, it's there. And now they've got that to carry with them. And I think that does come back to remembering how they were treated.
I was just in a meeting in the last 2 days with other student conduct people from around the country, and God, this is constant. Um, like, can you all tell me, like, we just need the perfect sanction for, in this case, it was hazing. And I talked about, restorative practices, but I kind of wish I had channeled you, like, there is no perfect sanction. There's the relationship. And if you build trust, it doesn't matter what you do, like, it will lead to a positive outcome. That's what I wish I had said. But when I go off to conferences, like, "Hey, are there any workshops you all want me to go to?" It's always around sanctions, getting the perfect creative sanction. And like the perfect sanction is one that you built with the student
Yeah.
together to get them what they need. I need to channel that Norcross in me to be a little more strong about, like, it's not about the sanction.
Yeah, it's what the student needs. With my conducting students, I say there are two pillars to what we're doing. One is what the composer needs, the other is what your performers need. Sounds like the sanction is what does the institution need and what does the
Mhm.
student need?
The composer is our code of conduct,
Yeah,
which can be wrong, can be unjust, or
absolutely. I mean, I had an experience with one of my daughters who had an issue at another university, and I ended up talking to their person in charge of these things. I said, "Okay, we see what happened. There's no question what happened. I think the better question is why, and with the why, then this sanction doesn't make sense."
Mhm.
And they said, "Well,
Mhm.
that's the code of conduct." I said, "Well, in which case, then a computer could do this. I guess now we'd say AI could do this."
I used to say a monkey could do.
Right. So what we need is a human to look at this and recognize, yes, it's black and white what the rules are, but how that is dealt and the issues around that with a human needs a human. I said, I don't know about you. My conversation with this person at another university, doesn't it feel embarrassing not to be functioning like a human on this?
Yeah.
That kind of ended our conversation. I don't think that went well.
I'm gonna bring up one other. I don't know if this would be a proper
Yeah.
Norcross-ism, and I didn't know
Mm.
how to fit it into this conversation, but this feels like when we used to drag, and often it's the percussion folks that are guilty of this, you would tell us, like, when you are dragging the tempo, it literally hurts my arm.
Yes.
And that came back to me 100 times, 1,000 times over my career in conversations like this where we're like, "We need to really innovate our practice." Like, "The lawyer won't like that. Oh, I don't know, that's too risky. No, we don't wanna change. That'll take." And I'm like, "You're hurting my arm."
Right.
Like, we're ready, like, we are ripe for some change, but, I just I don't, maybe you're guilty
Yes.
of planting that in me, but
I mean,
it hurts.
it literally hurts, and for me, that's a physical. I can feel the weight of the group on my arm as I'm moving as a conductor.
Mm.
I think what you described is feeling the weight of all of this on your soul, your teaching soul. When sometimes when folks are dragging, I use the comment, "You are late and slow." And the flip side of this, you need to anticipate and energize. Well, then when you're thinking about all of this, how you're going to anticipate and energize, that's a little bit different. Anticipating is vision and energizing is moving.
Just writing this down.
Yeah, that's a,
Anticipate and
yeah,
energize.
It's almost like deficit language. Like you're taking deficit language and flipping it on its end.
flip.
Yeah, I
Man,
like that.
when you flip situations, you turn a negative into a positive, and we've got plenty of negatives. And if you're going to only look at them as a negative, well, I mean that doesn't grow.
Mm.
But if you can take that negative and make it the root system for a positive, now we got something completely different.
There's so many musical metaphors. I remember playing Gershwin with you where I had to play these bicycle horns,
Yes,
and
yes,
if and I just had to go beep, 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 beep,
yep.
and to do it on the beat meant that it
You were
wasn't
like,
going to make the sound
oh,
until a half second after it was needed, and you just told me, like, Colette, "Just start the beep a half beat early."
yeah.
Um, but in my work now, I call that, like, can we get ahead of this? Like, can we anticipate the impact of a decision that we're going to make? And but I like the term energize too. Like, isn't this fun to be able to think
Oh, yeah.
ahead?
That change that makes it joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to respond and react because that means you're observing. That's really important. But if you're always responding, reacting, you're always behind.
I don't know about Kurt. I'm eager to hear Brian's conduct story.
I am too. Yeah. And I'm worried I was the conduct officer at
Yeah.
the
I believe that folks need to come to rehearsals on time. And to be on time means you have to be there at least 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes ahead so you can get your instrument ready, warmed up, you're in position, get your head, your soul, your heart ready. So I had a really significant talk with one of the performing groups about all of this. And I decided that the next time someone came in late, and I had a chart as to who had classes just before. So the classes just before, I'm like, okay, I'll give them. But if they don't, there's going to be a public execution because this has to stop. And lo and behold, the next rehearsal, in walked this particular student. I could use their name, but I'm not going to because I remember it. And public execution. So after rehearsal, she came up to me and apologized and then said, I had left to come to rehearsal 15 minutes early. And then my phone went off. It was my mom. Her brother, my uncle, had just been killed in a car crash. And I was talking her down. And I went from 5'10" to 3.8 3'3", and suddenly the situation had flipped from her apologizing to me apologizing to her, and now putting on my mental health first aid hat and saying, okay, let's sit down and talk. Tell me about your uncle. How are you? What can we do for you? And I'm so sorry what I did to you. So the lesson for me was the first thing you do is ask, are you okay? If they say yes, now you can execute them. But if they say no, then you can have a conversation and figure out what's gone wrong.
That's your soundbite right there, by the way. It's
I know, like TikTok, here we come.
So not long after, I had a student percussionist who did not arrive for a rehearsal for a concert. So immediately after that rehearsal, I called, they answered the phone, and I said, hey, it's Brian Norcross. Are you okay? They immediately apologized, saying, oh my gosh, I fell asleep. I'll be there in 3 minutes. I said, okay, great. I just need to know you're all right. Thanks. He was a sophomore at that point. In his senior year exit interview with the chemistry department, they asked, what was the most significant event of your time at Franklin and Marshall? He said, I slept through a rehearsal, and Brian Norcross called me, and the first thing he asked was, are you okay? That was the first time I thought anybody cared about me. I was ready to transfer. And then I realized somebody cared about me.
I have another question. I thought
Oh, good.
that was a good place to end, but I can't end it. It's similar to the question I asked before, but about like, how do you know how much to challenge somebody? But in terms of a group, there were sometimes you chose pieces where I was like, oh, golly, we don't have any business doing this piece. And yet, in the end, there we were. And there had to have been mistakes, and they had to have gone into your calculus. But sometimes we have to make those student conduct decisions too. Like, when do you give somebody a third chance, a fourth chance, knowing, or even a second chance? Like, oh, Brian's coming back again. You know, our one conversation, I know it's not going to be enough. They're going to get in trouble a few more times. But what is your calculus for knowing when is something just too hard and too many mistakes?
Part of it is experience. I choose repertoire with great care. It's the curriculum, and it's based upon what I perceive I know about the students or the musicians, professionals also. It's the amount of time that we have to rehearse together. It's the amount of other things that I think are difficult and what I think that they can accomplish and how much more I think they can accomplish than they think they can.
Mm.
Which means in the initial reading, I'm evaluating how long do I think it's going to take to fix that? How long to fix that? How long to fix that? After we've gone through maybe 2 weeks, if I don't see a pathway, then I'll say, hey, folks, you know what? I think I've made a mistake. I think this is a great piece, but we're going to have to change. And usually there's applause.
Hmm.
Oh, but maybe we're at that 2-week point and I see a pathway. And that's when I will say to the group, this is hard. You've already figured that out. And you might be asking, why in the world has Norcross lost his mind again and given us this kind of music that we have no business performing? And the reason is, I believe in you. And it's what we do in the Franklin and Marshall Orchestra, Symphonic Wind Ensemble, Philharmonic, whatever it is. And that became a rallying call. Because there would be students who would say, the reason we do this is because we're the Franklin and Marshall Symphonic Wind Ensemble.
Yeah, we do it because it's hard.
Because it's hard. And he believes in me. He said so. And then when that first step of improvement happens, I'm all over it. Yes, that's so much better. Here's the next thing we need to do. So positive reinforcement, then the not constructive criticism, but the teaching. Positive, and the positive has to be timely and truthful. I can't say, hey, that was great when it wasn't great. You all knew it wasn't great. Hey, we made progress. Not much, but we did this. Excellent. Now here's what the next step is. So that's where I think with the conduct situation of saying, hey, look at what you did. That was good. Now let's figure out how we can not get you in trouble.
I have a little phrase. I mean, it's not rocket science, but I don't use it very often. But I'm just saying to a student, this can never happen again. Are we in agreement here? Like, this can never happen
This
again.
can never happen again.
Where 99% of cases I talk to students, like, I'm not going to surveil you. You might choose to do this again, but I I think there's a trust in that. Like, this one
Yes.
thing, can we just agree right here at this table? Never again.
This is never happening again.
But
And
there's trust in that relationship.
there have been times when I need to do something disciplined with a student, I don't want to do it in front of people. So this is a one-on-one conversation, in which case I can say, listen, you might do this again and I won't know. So it's just between you and God. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I think that might be something you should consider.
I say the same thing, but you and your conscience.
Yes. So it's same
I'll
thing.
leave this with you. I'm
This-
going to have to just leave it with you to decide.
And
Yeah.
if you can live with that kind of baggage, that darkness hanging around your soul, okay. I don't think you should.
And I won't think any worse of you. You're still the same person.
And that's where when someone has made a significant mistake, knowing that there's someone is saying, I still care for you. The mistake you made is not going to change that. The
Mhm.
number of times I've had a student come up to me and say, I hope you're not going to hate me because they had to miss a rehearsal or something. I said, do you understand? There is literally nothing you can do that will cause me not to always love you. I am never going to hate you. You can try, but it's not going to work. So that flips it again. They're like, okay, so and that's humanism, being humanistic, checking on the shoe size. I learned something huge from the choral director that I replaced at First United Methodist. He was there for 25 years. And as he handed me his keys, he said to me, I said, you left big shoes for me to fill. He said, well, you better bring your own because I'm taking mine. Okay, now I've been there for 33 years, and I feel really badly for the person who has to take my shoes because there's nothing left. They're tatters. But yeah, getting into their what are they feeling? Boy, that helps, makes a huge difference.
Let's end right there.
Okay.
That was perfect punctuation.
I agree.
Dr. Norcross, thank you for this. Thank you for a lifetime of joy.
This has been terrific. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Misbehavior is written and produced by Colette Shaw and Kurt Doan. Theme music was written and performed by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. You can contact Ms. Behavior at msbehaviorcollege@gmail.com. That's msbehaviorcollege@gmail.com.